Everything in the world is afraid of time, but time is afraid of the pyramids, says an ancient Arabic proverb. Modern educated people speaking about their very distant ancestors usually represents a wild and primitive people. But it all somehow does not fit with those grand megastructures that have reached us from time immemorial. Just think, we not only do not know how they were built, but also, having advanced construction technologies, often cannot even repeat them. Today in issue we will dive into the mysterious world of ancient pyramids. And we begin with the only one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, which has survived to the present day, the Pyramid of Cheops and other amazing buildings located in Egypt. Could the ancient Egyptians build their own giant pyramids and palaces? People who only read about these structures in history books think yes, but many of those who have been at the foot of the Great Pyramids doubt. The structures are too impressive even by modern standards. According to historians, the Egyptian pyramids were built in 2500 years BC by the pharaohs Cheops, Chephren and Mykeren. Such conclusions are made on the basis of the book History of the Greek thinker Herodotus. In his writings, it stated that before the construction of the Pyramid of Cheops, the construction site was leveled and a road was built, along which the construction material was transported in a sledge. The preparatory work took about 10 years. The main construction lasted for another 20 years. About 100,000 people worked on the construction of a huge tomb of Cheops. The process of construction of the pyramid Herodotus described as follows. The method used was to build steps, or as some call rows or terraces. When the building of the base was finished, the blocks for the next row above the base were raised from the main level by devices made of short wooden levers. On this first row there was another that raised the blocks on level higher. Thus, step by step, the blocks rose higher and higher. Each row or level had its own set of mechanisms of the same type, which easily moved load from level to level. It would seem that everything is simple and logical, if not the size and weight of the blocks, which reached 35 tons. But let's order. The official version of the authors and methods of construction of such structures does not withstand the slightest criticism and crumbles into dust with an impartial consideration of the accumulated facts. Can you believe a Greek scientist? Herodotus wrote his book 2000 years after the construction of the pyramids. All his judgments are based on information collected during travel, and in fact are transcription of legends and myths. Do not lose sight of the fact that to this day preserved many documents compiled by the ancient Egyptians, which contain detailed descriptions of the time. But the strange thing is, they don't say a word about who built the pyramids and when it happened. There are no inscription or drawings in the pyramid. Not found any papyrus or rock art where Cheops was called as the creator of such a grandiose building. Only known the character for Mer, meaning the pyramid. The characteristics of the equipment used in the construction of megaliths amaze specialists even today. As the Egyptians raised to more than 100 meters higher heavy blocks using rather unreliable wooden structures. By the way, used in modern construction, a steel T-beam can support a load of about 100 tons. A wooden beam of 10-inch thickness and the same length can hold about 10 tons. In addition, the tree is severely deformed under heavy load. During the construction of the pyramids, the Egyptians did not use solutions, neither concrete nor clay, but the joints between the boulders are practically absent. The slabs weighing several tons are perfectly laid and polished. In Aswan preserved quarry, which was mined grey granite, in it remained an unordered block weighing about 1,200 tons. Quite a lot of blocks have a complex geometric shape, which requires a clear movement of the processing tool in 3 planes. With manual processing such a result of impossible to achieve, it is clearly the fruits of a highly developed civilization, which had at its disposal complex machinery, at least the level of modern civilization. The marks left by the circular saws in general represent one of the most significant moments of this theory. For example, a trace of the basalt block of the temple floor near the pyramid of Userkaf in Saqqara, or traces preserved on the side wall of the sarcophagus of black basalt, which is also in Saqqara but in the pyramid of the 6th dynasty of the Ont. Another interesting detail is the use of such technology as drilling in ancient Egypt. Drill channels in various products vary from 0.63 cm to 45 cm in diameter. In the fact of the presence of such types of holes, there is nothing beyond but drilling holes in granite, a very difficult task which demonstrates a high level of technology. Before making a carbide tubular drill, civilization had to go a long way of development, to build a complex social organism, to accumulate a huge amount of knowledge in almost all areas of science and technology. The 3 giants in Giza are significantly different from the first pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser, built by a razor-raw method of poorly treated stone using clay solution. No one doubts that this building is the work of ancient Egyptian builders. But the Great Pyramids are too different in the manner of construction from this and other less high pyramids, while they are separated by only about 100 years. It seems as if the unique technology was used only a few times and then went into oblivion. For some reason, the unique construction technology, which allegedly managed to master the ancient Egyptians, ceased to be used. 100 years after the construction of the Great Pyramids, the architects returned to the crude and primitive technique of construction terms for the pharaohs. Speaking of the great structure of ancient Egypt, we cannot ignore such a creation of architecture as the Great Sphinx. The size of the Sphinx is really huge. Its length is 73 meters and the height of the order of 20 meters. For millennia the Sphinx was covered with sand to the neck. Periodically it tried to clear away, however. In most cases were limited only to the front part. Completely cleared the Sphinx and learned the true volumes only in the 1925. It's interesting that the structure has clearly distinguishable stripes. This erosion indicates that once of the Sphinx was neck-deep in water. But when? At the time of the Great Flood, which took place 13,000 years ago, according to Sumerian mythology, when the Egyptian Sphinx did not yet exist? Classical Egyptology claims that it was built in the time of Pharaoh Cheops or his son, about 2,500 years BC, based only on the fact that by its artistic features it can be attributed to that era. But a century and a half ago in Giza was found the so-called inventory stelae, which indicates that Cheops ordered only to repair the damaged statue. Repair, not build. In the early 19th, American geologist Robert Schoch proved that the furrows on the body of the Sphinx and on the wall of the trench around it, traces of erosion is not found, and rain, vertical stripes instead of horizontal. But serious rains in Egypt was not at least 8,000 years. Immediately after the publication of the Schoch, the Egyptian authorities started an urgent restoration of the Sphinx. Now the lower two-thirds of the monuments is covered with new masonry, and the top of the sculpture is cleaned. Almost no traces of erosion left. On the basis of all the above suggests a simple conclusion. The Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, all this created some other unknown civilization that existed in these places for thousands of years before the ancient Egyptians. According to the creator of the project Laboratory of Alternative History, Andrei Sklarov, something was built by the ancient Egyptians themselves. But they built their buildings on the basis of ancient structures. This is clearly seen on the pyramids, which are made by hand, in which with the help of high-precision tools, says Andrei. As the original pyramids built by pre-civilization, there were only 7, 3 in Giza, 2 in Ashur, and 1 Medum. Perhaps another was in Abu Rash, but it's not clear whether the pyramid or the bunker. Under the order, pyramids are the ancient structures completed by the pharaohs, which were originally typical bunkers, and with such powerful ceilings that you cannot call them anything but a refuge in case of a nuclear war. An ancient legend says that created the Egyptian kingdom 9 white gods. 4 of them came from the north and 5 from the west of the land, which plunged into the depths of the great waters. The most important of them the Egyptians called Ra. He came with his brother gods from the Northland. There is a theory, increasingly confirmed by findings around the world, that people are not the first inhabitants of our planet. Long before the first people on Earth lived a race of highly developed beings, technology which made it possible to build such magnificent structure as the pyramids. Often sounds the idea that this supreme had the support of the gods, which gave them a unique ancient knowledge. The theory holds the position that the age of the pyramids is much more ancient than is commonly believed in official science. These giants managed to survive the collisions of the planet with a cosmic body, which led to the death of an ancient civilization, causing a flood which became a key moment in biblical history. This disaster caused the shift of earthly axis, which caused a slight change in the location of the pyramids relative to each other. And of course, there are extraterrestrial hypotheses that claim that the pyramid and other mysterious structures were built by aliens from other planets. American writer Zacharian Sitchin hypothesized that the pyramids of Giza were built by the gods, not by humans, as part of the landmarks for the Till-Moon cosmodrome. As the author himself said, built by the gods Anunnaki, the pyramids served as milestones and beacons for the cosmodrome in Sinai and existed long before the region of the pharaohs and Egypt. The most amazing thing is that the recently found Sumerian texts, and Sumerian civilization is much older than Egyptian one, speak of the Great Pyramid. And in our firm belief, this single fact is enough to prove that the pyramid was built before the emergence of the Egyptian civilization of the pharaohs. Another amazing fact: know that mankind pyramids are present on every continent of our planet. In addition to the world-famous pyramids of Egypt, these buildings were also found in Mexico, Bosnia, Italy, Spain, Croatia, Slovenia, Greece, Turkey, England, France, Serbia, and so on. The Pyramid of the Sun. The Aztecs called this 64-meter colossus who discovered it in the abandoned ancient city of Teotihuacan in the early 13th century. This attraction is located near Mexico City. Its base is only 3% inferior to the Pyramid of Cheops, which puts it in third place, largest in the list of all known pyramids in the world. In 1991, at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle, at the depth of 600 meters, were discovered pyramids much higher than the Egyptian. The surface of the pyramids is perfectly smooth, made of material resembling glass. Later, during the next expedition, the city was discovered underwater, consisting of pyramids, rectangles and balls made of granite blocks. In 2005, independent researcher Semiras Managic stated that mountain Visočica, located near the town of Visoko in Bosnia, is actually a pyramid and has an artificial origin. Soil studies have confirmed this theory. Further, geodetic surveys have shown that the Pyramid of the Sun, as it was later called, has a clear orientation to the cardinal points, as well as the Egyptian pyramids. Its northern side looks in the direction of the North Star. The angles formed by the faces of the pyramid are absolutely straight and equal. In addition, around the pyramid, on all its sides during the excavation, were found massive stone slabs, clearly of non-native origin. Analysis of these plates showed that they are made of a substance of the type of concrete, the composition of which is unknown to us. In one of the districts of Sevastopol, in the Crimea, during the search of underground reserves of the thermal waters, at a depth of 10 meters, drillers also came across a pyramid. The place for drilling was initially chosen on the basis of the fact that there was an epicenter of a powerful microwave radiation with a radius of 100 meters. Researchers Goch and Taran received the certificate of scientific discovery and, having accessibly excavations, discovered that the pyramid was inundated to the top as a result of the flood. It was also found that the faces of the excavated pyramid contained gypsum, lead and liquid glass, as well as copper oxide. As is known, the Egyptian pyramids have the same composition in their outer layer. Total in the Crimea at the moment found 37 pyramids. The existence of China's pyramids was discovered only in the middle of the 20th century. In the satellite photos near the city of Xi'an, there are 16 pyramids. These pyramids for many years were not known to anyone. The Chinese government carefully concealed their existence. The largest pyramid is about 300 meters of height and at the base of about 500 meters. It's very interesting that the pyramids are located at 34 degree north latitude, and their layout is very similar to the Egyptian. The Egyptian pyramids are at 30 degree north latitude, and there is a geometric correspondence in the pyramids, which suggests that one civilization built the pyramids. In 1985, off the coast of the island of Yonaguni, washed by the waters of the East China Sea and the Philippine Sea, in the coastal underwater area found a similarity of the pyramids. The first studies have revealed that the stone objects occupy a vast area almost around the entire southern coast of the island. The central structure is a stone massif, which is a rather complex structure, the base of which is a high platform with a length of 200 meters, a width to 150 and a height of 25 meters. It's located on flat terraces descending down in massive steps. The architecture of the structure resembles the pyramids of the ancient Incas, confirming the hypothesis of the man-made origin of the underwater city. At a depth of 15 meters, a stone-carved sculpture was found, on which you can see long arms resembling the hands of a sphinx. Scuba divers swimming around the platform saw carving on the rocks, similar to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are still not deciphered, and engraved images of animals. In mid-June 2013, a group of researchers discovered and photographed 3 strange ancient pyramids in Antarctica, apparently of artificial origin. 2 of the 3 pyramids found are about 16 kilometers from the shore, and the third is very close to the coastal line. The pyramids are practically not studied because of the inaccessibility of the ice continent. And finally, the most controversial pyramid, the famous Tibetan mountain Kailas, the faces of which are oriented to the cardinal points. The mountain is the highest peak in its area, and it has not yet been conquered. In ancient religions of Nepal and China, Kailas is considered sacred, and many pilgrims protest against its conquest. In a religious text about the mountain reads, "No mortal dares to climb the mountain where the gods live. Who will see the faces of the gods must die." The traveler and researcher Ernst Moldashev, who made an expedition to Mount Kailas, noted that if you hold an imaginary line through Kailas to center of the earth, it will cross the island of Easter. In addition, Kailas is one of the same meridian as Easter Island and the Egyptian pyramids. In his opinion, all the surrounding Kailas smaller mountains are also the oldest pyramids. Their age exceeds the age of the Egyptian pyramids, which, unlike the Tibetan, have been preserved much better. For comparison, if the average age of the great Egyptian pyramids is about 4,600 years, then, according to some estimates, the age of the Tibetan pyramids is about 1 million years. Our history of the pyramids would be incomplete if we did not mention the existence of this incredible structure on other objects of the solar system. Photos taken by the American station Lunar Orbiter 2 in 1966 from a height of 48 kilometers captured in the area of the Sea of Rains 8 objects of regular pyramidal or conical shape. Exploring the images of the lunar pyramids, the Soviet engineer Abramov found that the plan of placement of the lunar objects of pyramid shaped similar to the plan of location of the pyramids of Cheops, Chephren and Mykeren on the Giza Plateau. What is surprising, the centers of these buildings are a mirror image of the tops of the 3 Egyptian pyramids. Of November 26, 2008, the camera of the Indian space probe Chandrayaan-1 began shooting mountains and craters of the moon. One of the photographs received by scientists depicts a pyramidal object having a perfect triangle at its base. And if we consider that the photo was taken from a height of 395 kilometers, the face of this pyramid should reach 4 kilometers. And of course, speaking of extraterrestrial pyramids, it's impossible not to mention the pyramids of Mars. In 1976, astronomer Tobias Owen studied the area of Mars to land the spacecraft. Having received the next picture from the probe NASA Viking 1, he just could not believe his eyes. The scientists saw a huge three-dimensional face that looked from the surface of the red planet. NASA, for some reason, and as it turned out later, rather rashly decided to publish a press release 6 days later with a message about this quake of nature. Despite the fact that NASA experts tried to present these photos in a humorous light, they do not seem to have succeeded. In 1979, another employee of the organization was able to enlarge the image for more detailed consideration, thanks to which a single pentahedral pyramid was found between the so-called Sphinx and the cluster of pyramids. In the subsequent detailed work on the picture found a whole array of objects: fort, dome, the ruins of the city with the central square, cliff, and a number of small pyramids. Impressed the size of buildings. In the pyramids of Cheops reached a height of almost 140 meters. The Martian pyramids reach a whole kilometer in length and 2 kilometers in width. They are oriented on the north pole of the planet, and their location, according to astrophysicists, is not accidental. In relation to each other, they are at absolutely right angles. So, what were the pyramids for? What was the purpose of their creation? This can tell us the amazing properties of the pyramids. The first of our contemporaries who established a number of unusual phenomena associated with the pyramid was a French scientist Antoine Bovie. In the 30s of the last century, a French scientist exploring the various pyramids of Egypt found that the bodies accidentally trapped inside the pyramid, small animals, mummified. Bovie returned to France and built a wooden model of the pyramid, orienting it to the cardinal points as the Egyptian pyramids. Having placed the body of a dead cat at 1/3 the distance from the base to the top, after 18 days he found her body mummified. It reached the effect with the other organic substance: vegetables, fruits, raw fish, dairy products mummified. They did not spoil and did not rot. Milk in 30 days in a pyramid turned into cheese. The fish in the scales lost in 15 days in the pyramid up to 45 of its weight. During this time, another fish that was placed in a cube-shaped box was rotten and lost only 17 of its weight. From the above, a number of scientists made a logical conclusion: the pyramids are batteries of some kind of energy. According to the Russian scientist Nikolai Levashov, one of the main purposes of the pyramids, built after the planetary catastrophe that occurred as a result of the fall of the fragments of the second moon Fata on the Earth, in which caused the poles to shift 13,000 years ago, is the stabilization of the axis of rotation of the Earth. And they were not built randomly, but strictly along certain energy lines and at the points of the intersections. In other words, the pyramid itself is nothing but an ordinary lens that modulates the stream spacing through it, feeding the Earth's energy fields and not allowing the movement of the lithosphere. As a result of a global catastrophe, our planet turned 23.5 degrees. For observers, the Sun began to pass through as a zodiacal constellation. Most of the technology, as a result of the disaster, was lost along with the infrastructure of civilization. The remaining machines were used for the construction of the megaliths, but eventually gone and they. Therefore, the majority of megaliths have a megalithic core and a primitive superstructure, made using manual technologies. There have been global climate change towards cooling the atmosphere and possible the gravity of the planet. Various large objects, such as fragments of the third moon Lel, destroyed about 113,000 years ago, and the large asteroids fell on the Earth before, which if you look closely there is enough evidence on the surface of our planet. For example, the largest crater on Earth is the Rutherford crater in the Republic of South Africa. Its diameter reached 300 kilometers, and the size of the cosmic body that created the crater is estimated at around 20 kilometers. The crater of Rutherford is so large that several dwarf European countries can fit in it. Theoretically, there are craters and more. Under the ice of Antarctica hits the 540 kilometers crater from the impact of an asteroid. The Caribbean and many other water bodies could also be created by meteorites. So, summing up the conversation, today we have pyramids scattered across the surface of our planet, of different height and width, some with internal rooms, with a smooth surface and stepped, round, square and even ellipsoidal, stone and brick, decorated and without any sinks, some with small buildings on top. It's not included that this distinct feature indicates the various functions with which this or that building was endowed. Commonplace funerary structure, capacitors, power station, energy transmitters, bomb shelters, receivers and transmitters of information, both within the Earth and near and far space, and even places for landing and refueling of spaceships, for example the ziggurats of the ancient Sumerians, with flat tops. Nevertheless, the main fact remains indisputable. In ancient times, there existed a highly developed civilization on Earth, perhaps even more advanced than our modern Western civilization. However, access to the artifacts that confirms this is largely closed. The ban regime is gradually increasing. Many of the objects accessible to any tourist just a couple of years ago are now closed. Even the world-famous Cairo Museum is now available only for inspection. Not only video, but also photography is prohibited. The so-called restoration is carried out on a wild scale, and in fact, the reconstruction of ancient buildings and for new additions, it's difficult to determine the true type of objects. This is done, apparently, to ensure that we continue to believe that until recently our ancestors were stupid and wild barbarians. But who needs it and why? That question is for another conversation.